73.
And Nathan's a big fan of the IRS, as we're going to find out.
He is. And what kind of attorney are you, Nathan?
Well, it's great to be here. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I was a prosecutor, did that for a few years, and now I practice on the other side.
Where do you live?
In Iowa.
No, I'm talking about, I want your street address. I want your, well, okay, we're IRS agents. We'll just go ahead and tell you right now, Nathan. And so, no, we're kidding. In Iowa, you've been associated with the Tea Party movement, right?
I've written for the Tea Party Tribune. I did that most of last year.
Yeah.
And also have columns appear in the Iowa Republican.
What do you think about what's the breaking news now that, the conservative and Tea Party groups have been claiming this has been going on for a couple, 3 years now, as retaliation for basically opposing President Obama's agenda.
Some groups not given tax-exempt status as well as...
What do you think about this story?
Well, it's not surprising. And I think more has happened that we don't know about, and I think it's more will happen in the future, either under this president or another president. It's just far too easy for the executive to abuse the process by having the IRS go after his political enemies.
Talk about your book, Letters from Cell Number 73. What's this about?
It is set in the future in the year 2034. It's a set of 15 letters that Colonel Peter Yossi writes to his grandchildren. He has been captured as a prisoner of war in the Second Mexican-American War. There are a group of states that seceded, well, a number of states that seceded from the federal government. He belongs to one. The Mexican government sent their army across the border and invaded his new country. So he and his regiment go to try to drive them out of Colorado. They're unsuccessful. His only son, who was serving under him, was killed, and he was taken captive. And so during his time as a prisoner of war, he wanted to write to his grandchildren a series of letters and let them know the mistakes that past generations made in hopes that their generation won't make the same mistake.
This is set in the year 2034.
Right.
And so it's why did you write a work of fiction? Do you think this is going to happen?
As I wrote in the back, these are not meant to be predictions, merely warnings. I think some, all, maybe none, but I think not most. I do think some of these things or variations of these things will happen in the future. And within or without of the time frame that I used, I have the letters written in 2034. It could be 2044, 2054. It could be sooner. I don't know. But I wanted to write a piece of fiction that hopefully served as a wake-up call so that Americans could see where we were heading and hopefully change course.
What's your greatest concern you're trying to get out to the public?
The greatest concern in the book is just where we are financially and how it's unsustainable. And we always say that, but it really is. We're at the point where we don't have much time to be able to stop.
We just print more money, Nathan. Don't you know that?
That's what we're doing until people stop buying it, which we buy it, but then that causes inflation. It's a house of cards, and it's going to come down at some point. But my hope is that we can change course before that.
Talking to Nathan Tucker, who's a defense attorney from this great state of Iowa, which produces more bacon than any other state in America. And for that, we're all thankful. Well, mate, I don't speak for everybody. There's some.
Well, you speak for me.
There's certainly some vegetarians out there who are repulsed by my idea of speaking for everyone. But for many Americans, we're thankful for that. Ed?
Nathan, in your book, you take a very interesting approach. As you mentioned, these are letters written from this colonel to grandchildren, and you lay out not only the dangers that the country is facing now, it's in the past for this colonel, but you spend a lot of time having the character talk to the grandchildren in these letters about the difference between the way the country was founded and what happened to move the country away from those foundations. What do you think Why don't you just tell our listeners, and most of them are probably familiar with these kinds of warnings because we talk about them all the time, but what are the lessons that we either are or have forgotten that our founders didn't want us to forget?
The most basic is that we no longer fear government, but we seek not just protection, but for the government to provide basic necessities and even things like student loans, retirement, housing. We all feed off of the government, which in turn means that we all feed off of each other. It's a vicious cycle of greed that, as I wrote in the book, leads to a bankruptcy of the national soul, and then it eventually leads to bankruptcy of the national government.
But don't you care about people, Nathan?
Very much so. Problem is, and actually I have a blurb about this in the back of letters that talks about the next book coming out, Julia's Christmas Carol, where I illustrate how real caring for other people is done in the private sector, but not just private charities, but by individuals taking the initiative to serve other people. But the government cannot show compassion for people without taking money from other people. It cannot perform an act of charity without performing an act of theft first. And that's something that we have lost sight of as I mentioned, as we just feed off of government for our own selfish ends.
Talking to Nathan W. Tucker, author of the fictional book, A Futuristic Look at What Might Happen in America, Letters from Cell Number 73. Where can people read about this?
They can go to my website, nathanwtucker.com. Don't forget the W. I think there is another Nathan Tucker out there, so make sure you have the W in there. They can go to the website, they can check out the book, and some previous books I've written, and they can order it from there.
I want to ask you mentioned, I've asked many people this before. I'm always curious at the answer I get, especially from people who follow the story or are in the know. You mentioned about the debt. I guess that's what you're talking about is the 16, 17?
Somewhere around there.
16 or 17 trillion dollars that we owe, our federal government owes now. And
right.
It's continuing to grow. And go and watch the national debt clock if you want to get dizzy, or sick at your stomach. But how do I say this without sounding totally pessimistic? I don't think anything can be done to stop that from whatever bad is going to happen, because there's not the will among enough of the American people or the knowledge, quite frankly, to do anything substantially about it. And certainly our politicians in Washington, and I blame liberal Democrats more than I blame Republicans, but I certainly blame Republicans too, because they've gone along with the
the giveaway, the candy store.
With the candy store too.
Right.
But so do you agree with my pessimism that there's nothing at this point that's going to be done to stop whatever bad is going to happen whenever that day comes? We're just going to have to come out on the other side and rebuild whatever's left of our economy.
And as I wrote in letters, first of all, let me say no one writes a doomsday novel because I hope no one writes it because they want to see it come true. I think there's still a chance that we can turn the Titanic around, but we're running out of time. And as I wrote in letters, unfortunately, the voter addiction to government spending is like any other addiction, and far too often the only way to cure it is by hitting bottom. But I think there is still time to turn things around. And the sad thing is we don't need a majority in both the House and the Senate, or the House, Senate, and White House, presidents in the White House. The Republicans in the House of Representatives could just have a balanced budget overnight if they refuse to raise the debt ceiling. They won't do it, but it's that simple. We don't need a balanced budget amendment. We don't need a 5-year plan or a 7-year or 10-year or 40-year plan to a balanced budget. we can have it overnight as long as we just impose
As long as you do what, Nathan?
As long as we impose a credit limit on ourselves by failing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That is not going to happen.
And I share your pessimism, but I hope, and like I said, the whole point of writing the book is that people would read about this, see what might happen, and
I understand what you're saying, and I hope you're right. I've talked to conservative Republicans, who serve in Congress. They're not going to vote against defaulting on. That's what
because they know that's what it'll be called.
Yeah,
we're defaulting.
That's what it would be called. It's not an actual default.
I understand but that's how they'll say it. They'll say, well, so you don't want Social Security checks to go out to people? I'm not going to vote for that.
Yeah.
So they're going to keep borrowing money until, like I said, until
we're Greece.
Until doomsday comes, and whenever, or if it does, I don't. Maybe you can print money to infinity. Yeah. I don't know. We've never been in this uncharted water before.
Well, at some point there'll be too much money for demand. I mean, that's inevitable.
Well, when will that? You would think after $16 trillion that would show up. I mean, can you go to 50 trillion and still? You know what I'm saying?
It depends on. I mean, money is fiat. It depends on the value other countries put on it.
Well, and we're still number one, and who's going to replace us? Look at the euro, and if everything's relative, you know what I'm saying? Then I don't know.
Right.
It just
there are a number of countries, unfortunately, like Germany, Japan, China, who are agreeing to trade in their own money, which means they no longer have to trade in our money. That's what's been keeping the demand high. So if other countries move to that type of trade where they no longer need dollars, and especially if OPEC, for instance, would change, then there no longer would be the demand for our inflated money, and inflation would go to hyperinflation.
Yeah, but why couldn't the Fed just keep borrowing money?
Well, it could. It just would mean more inflation.
It's not funny, and I'm not trying to trap you or make a joke here. This is extremely serious. I understand it, but it's just when I hear this, when when you're $16 trillion in debt and there's no plan and there's no way the three of us will ever see that paid off in our lifetime.
Right.
No, and I don't know if it is. If we are capable of ever paying that off, the hope.
Who's going to come get? I guess I'm just saying, who's going to come get us? You know what I'm saying? Who's going to come get us and say you got to pay up, or else? And you're going, well, we're the U.S. What do you mean? What else? What else are you going to do to us? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. There's a lot of factors in it. I've made it simplistic here, but just when you're $16 trillion headed toward 25, and nobody in Washington D.C. can stop it, or has the will to stop it.
And in fact, nobody really seems that alarmed.
No, they don't care. President Obama, it's going to $6 trillion on his watch from 10 to 16. The American people said, November, give me some more of that. You know what I'm saying? So you're going, and President Obama goes on TV and says, hey, this debt's, in the short term, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. And and the stock market continues to go up. So you're going, well, maybe it's not going to affect us.
And what Nathan has written is a book that takes a look at some of the things that could happen to us as a country when the bill comes due.
Yeah.
And it's not a pretty picture. But I do like the fact that in your book there are still true patriots who want what our founding fathers delivered to us. They want that for their grandkids. But it looks like from your book, Nathan, that the aftermath of when the bill comes due is not a pretty picture.
No,
and it's probably true.
It could have been much worse too. The states that seceded were fortunate that they seceded, and they were only able to because the federal government didn't have the money to raise an army to stop them.
We're talking about a futuristic novel that Nathan's written, which we was just talking about.
Right.
Because the economic collapse as states begin to secede and form their own economies and everything. NathanWTucker.com is where you can contact Nathan and read about his book.